Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I'm here representing the Owl Foundation. I don't actually work there. I'm a volunteer. And so I give talks like this, and I'm really pleased to say I'm giving more and more of these talks. People are really interested in owls, which is wonderful, that any interest in wildlife, I think. And I also lead trips. So anybody who donates to the Owl Foundation at minimum $50 gets an invite in September to come and visit the facilities. And so I lead those trips around the facilities. So it's located in Vineland. It's on Jordan Harbor, if anybody knows where. It's one of the most beautiful properties in the whole peninsula because it's on a slope right down to the harbor. So the owls really enjoy that. And it specializes in the treatment and care of injured and orphaned owls, as well as to provide, most importantly, a natural habitat for the non-releasable wild owls. So some owls are too severely injured to be released into the wild, but they're not injured enough to be put down. So they do keep those owls on the site. So they provide their animals with care, and it's not just owls. Sometimes they get eagles and some hawks in there as well, and some falcons. So they provide the animals in our care with the highest standard of medical care, nutrition, and housing. In fact, the lady that started it all, Kay McKeever, she's since passed away, but her manual for owl care has been transcribed into 67 languages. So it's the manual for care of owls. And also the best housing that they can provide for them. Their goal is to reduce the mental stress of a wild animal in captivity. So they try and treat these, they don't try and humanize or get these animals to think that they're pets. They try and keep them in the natural state as much as possible under the circumstances. And they network with other rehabilitation communities so they can share knowledge and expertise and educate the public, which is what I'm here doing. So it's a registered charity. They have to have all sorts of permits with the government, and because they're dealing with wild animals, and both for the injured animals, the residents, and the orphaned birds. They're not open to the public, so the only way you can see the owls is by donating and then getting this invitation. And it's very restricted what we can do now. So anybody who's visited the facility in the past, we're not allowed to visit the releasable owls. We can only visit the residents. So they have an excellent technician on site that can do a lot of the basic diagnosis from fractures, wound management, fluid therapy, if they're starving, the orphans might need some care. And they also do release training to make sure if they're going to release owls that they can hunt and find food. They can hunt and also fly well enough to have a good chance to survive in the wild. So the goal is to return the animals, if they can, to good health so they can be released. That's the big goal. And sometimes it's an injury and sometimes it's an illness. And they need to make sure they can find their own food and fly well before they can be released. The baby owls need to learn that they're an owl, but not only do they need to learn that they're an owl, they need to learn that they're their species, because each species has different food requirements, different habitat. So great horned owl babies need to learn that they're great horned owls. So that's all part of the program. So let's talk about what the owl is. It's got a lot of very special features. So one is the curved, sharp beak for tearing their prey apart. And mostly their curved, sharp talons for grabbing their prey. And you can see the talons are really curved so that they can dig in and grab that prey. They also have really, really large eyes, and they're immobilized in their head, so they can only see straight ahead. We can move our eyes to the side and see like this, but they can only see straight ahead because the eyeballs are so big, they can't move them. So what do they do? Oops. Well, they're carnivores, so they like insects, snakes, rodents, birds, and other small mammals, depending on the size of the owl. So there's a lot of different sizes of owls. And there's all their prey. Mostly they're active at night, but there are, or low level lighting, but there are a few owls that will fly during the day and hunt during the day. So when they're active at night, we call them nocturnal. When they're active during the day, we call them diurnal. And then when they like the low light situation, right before dusk, when there's no color around, it's just all shades of gray, we call that crepuscular. Okay, their hunting styles range from hunting on the wing to perch and swoop, or hovering over a field. What's neat about them is their plumage, so it's really, really hard to see them. And I'm not sure if I can reach up here, but in the bottom right corner is a screech owl, and you can see the plumage is almost identical to the tree that it's sitting in. It's sitting in a hole in the tree. The one at the top is another screech owl that's been covered with snow, and on the left side, yeah, it's your left side, there's actually a short-eared owl sitting in a tree about its feet are about midway on the left side, and then it sits up higher. I don't know if you can see it or not. I don't think I can point to it, but
Hang on, Marcie, I should have I got a little laser.
oh, sweet. Take your time. Who can see it? Anybody? That's the bottom of its tail, and then it goes up from there. It's a screech owl, or it's a short-eared owl, I'm
There
sorry.
you go. Red button. Remember button. Just don't point at its face.
So there's the tail. And there's the head. It's a short, wait, better get on here. Apologies at home if you couldn't see that. But what was I going to say? It's a short-eared owl, and so it has no ear tufts. And we'll talk about the ear tufts in a minute. Oh, there, it's circled. Forgot that we circled it. So that's the owl. So they love to hide. There's actually a second owl in there that's even more hidden. So this is a very special feature of all owls, is that they're very shy and they like to hide. Okay, I'm gonna try and play a few songs, see how this goes.
Mouse should work for you there.
Oh, the mouse.
It is a touch screen, so you may be able just to touch them on the screen.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, you're an Apple type.
Yeah, so that's a northern saw-whet owl. We get them here in the winter sometimes, but they're mostly more north. Apparently, saw-whet was something that people used to sharpen their saws on, so it's kind of a mechanical sound. The middle one is one of my favorites, and it doesn't sound very much like an owl. Oh, yeah, touch. Yeah, isn't that interesting? So short-eared owls live grassland, and so they actually even breed on the ground. So sometimes I can find them at night. They're the birds that the owls that like the low light conditions. So I know behind the new hospital there's some there, and I'll just sit out there and I can hear them vocalizing like that. So it's pretty cool because they don't sound like owls at all. And this is another one that lives. way up north. So just a few calls that aren't what we think of normally as being owl calls. Their feathers are designed, if I had one here, you could touch it and it would be very, very soft. So it has some, the vein, it has some really short, very soft feathers on the edge, and that allows them to fly completely silently. I've been in cages when they've flown over my head, and if I had my eyes closed, I wouldn't even know it was there. They can turn their head almost all the way around, which is a really good benefit when you can only look this way. So they can actually turn their head almost all the way around because they have more vertebrae. They have twice as much vertebrae in their neck. And their blood, the vessels that hold their veins and arteries are 10 times bigger than ours. So the tubes, so that allows them to not cut off the blood supply to their brain. And this is all because of those big eyes and also their hearing. So I'm going to try this. It doesn't always work, but the great horned owl on the right, it's a young bird and he's just staring at us. That means he's scared. But the one on the left is turned and looking back behind him. And I'm hoping when I click again, he's going to turn his head right around. Yeah. So yeah, very cool adaptation for owls. One of the few animals that can do that. And again, it's got to do with the structure of their vertebrae in their spine. And this is how an owl skeleton would look. They're mostly all feathers. And so they kind of sit crouched over with their wings back like that. Oops, wrong one. They don't actually poop. I'm used to talking to kids, so I use the word poop. So they ate this, for instance, a mouse bowl. They just kind of choke it back. Or if it's bigger than that, they tear off some large pieces and eat it that way. But they don't, they can't digest the bones and the fur, for instance, for a mouse. So they don't poop. So what they do is cough it up like a hairball. Yeah, and you can find those on the ground. So you can see the upper pictures and pellets on the ground. They're usually dark. And so if you think you've got an owl or you want to look for an owl, you know, that's what I always start by doing, is looking for these pellets in the ground. They usually they have a roost tree where they go to cough up these pellets. And if you were to take them apart, although I don't advise right now touching them because there's avian flu and all sorts of things, unless you've got plastic gloves on. But if you did get them, and you can tear them apart and find skulls. Yesterday, I had a group of kids and we were finding skulls and all sorts of bones, and it was really cool. Lots of fun. I'm gonna do it with my grandkids, I think. Yeah, so this is what they do. That this owl is coughing up a pellet, and you can see it's, yeah. So it's a very good, it's a fairly big size, you know, it might have a couple of mice in there. Yeah, but what a shot, what a photo to get, not me, but I didn't get it, but what a shot to get. So it just literally coughs them up. So they can see, as we were mentioning before, with their eyes in very low light and actually quite a distance away, like most raptors. And same with their ears, but be careful, these are not ears. The feathers on top of their heads are just ear tufts. Their ears are actually on the sides of their head, and they're not symmetrical. So one's always a little lower and maybe pointed in a slightly different direction than the other. And that'll give some 3D hearing. So there you go. Those are actually the ears, right in the side of the head. And this one, you can see the one on the far right side, you can see that the one ear is much lower on the right side than the other ear on the left side. What's left of the ear. So where do they live? Just about everywhere. I've been to 14 countries and I've seen 62 species of owls. The only place they don't live is in the Arctic and Antarctic, except for, I just realized snowy owls actually live in the Arctic, so that's not quite right. They live in deserts, jungles, forests, prairies, bogs, everywhere, and I've seen them everywhere around the world. Another really cool thing about them is they never make their own nests. They always steal a nest. So some owls nest in a box, and you can actually put a box up on your property and hope that you might get one if it's the right size and the hole's the right size. And just cross your fingers and hope, but you can't use any chemicals because if you use insecticides for interest and they eat the insects that have that on them, it will poison them. So you have to be really careful about that. Other owls, bigger ones in particular, like stick nests. And so a great horned owl will steal stick nests from a red-tailed hawk. And because they nest there earlier, what they do is they look for a nest from the previous year, and they might add on to it a little bit, but they prefer just stealing the nest. They won't make one. So it's pretty interesting behavior. So mostly the different, I mean, we're talking about small and big owls, so I'm talking about mostly owls in southern Ontario. They lay between 2 and 4 eggs. The babes are quite helpless when they're born, and so they need their mom to provide warmth and food for them, shelter. But it's the dads that do all the hunting. So the female sits on the eggs and raises the young for most of the time, and the father will go out and get prey and bring it to the nest for both the female and the babes. And then both of them will protect them from danger and also teach them to fly and hunt for food. So the bottom picture is a snowy owl. The male's on the right and the babes are there. Don't think there's a female in there. I think those are all babes. The middle picture is great horned owl feeding a white mouse to its baby hole. And then the upper picture is some babes in the nest. So owls are really hard to find. How many people have seen an owl? Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah, I bird a lot. Right now I'm doing screech owl surveys and I maybe find 5 a night. I'm doing it all over the Niagara Peninsula. So screech owls are actually quite common, and you might hear them at night. You know, they have this funny song. I'll play it later, and it's very distinctive. Ways to find them again are look for the pellets on the ground. And I don't have my glasses on. Yeah, that's a pellet. And I also look, and look up in the tree. So if you find a pellet, look up in the tree. And I also look for what's called whitewash especially on cedars and trees like that, firs, because they don't actually pee either. They do kind of pee, but it's called uric acid, and it's white. So I'm always looking, it's not, sap is kind of pale white, dirty white, but owl pee, if you want to call it that, is white. It's really white. But yeah, you just look in the tree for these owls. There it is. Pointed at anybody. Oops. So that's that's a northern saw-whet owl. So mostly they're up in Algonquin, but some winters like this one, they'll come down further south, and we've got several in the area right now. 50 Point Conservation Area, for one, is a real hot spot for northern saw-whet owls. And what I do a lot of, because this is how we survey owls, I go out at night and I listen for them calling, or I use playback to track. And if you're really patient, and I'm glad so many people here have been successful seeing owls, you might see one. Okay, but there is a protocol, especially this is more for birders like me because we're obsessed with our bird list. But of course, never trespass on private property. Recognize signs of stress. So if the owl is staring back at you, and it could be a kilometer away, but if it's looking at you, it's really stressed out. If they have a lot of yellow in their eye, and you're close to them, they may squint their eyes. They may clap their bill because they're not happy with you. So there's various ways that they show signs of stress. And it's not good to stress them out because remember, they're trying to get a good night's sleep. And if you're like me and you sometimes don't get a good night's sleep, you're maybe not as productive the next day, which means they don't get enough food. So that's really important that they get a good day's sleep. So best to just have your look, take a few pictures and then back off and don't tell too many of your friends. Yeah, so now don't startle them, don't try and get too close. Our cameras are all really good. You can zoom in and get a picture without getting too close. Yeah, and just don't let a lot of people know about it because it becomes a real, well, I don't know if you were behind the hospital when we had snowy owls that year. I mean, there was a lot of cars and it was not good behavior on the part of some of the human beings. Okay, I do use vocalizations when I'm serving owls, but I only use it at the one time. I don't try to overplay it. And it's good to know where these animals are, because as we know, there's a lot of development pressure and it helps us maybe try and keep some of the habitat that these birds need. And definitely don't disturb a nesting owl. I would not trust a nest with 2 adults on great horned owls. I'd be kind of scared of them. Like most parents, they're super protective of their babes. And we all know if somebody came close to our babies or grandkids, they'd be in big trouble. So the owls feel the same way. And don't be fooled, they are watching. I know when I find a great horned owl in a nest, it can be a kilometer away, and that owl is watching me. So it's pretty interesting how far they can see and hear. So for photography, we'd like to suggest that the welfare of the owl is the most important thing. I see a lot of people take literally 1,000 pictures of the same owl, and I don't think that's necessary. You need to either improve your camera, your picture taking skills, or but don't take 1,000 pictures. They even bait them, which is even more dangerous because it teaches the owl that people have food. Using a blind can be useful. And some of the cameras out there, I mean, they can get pictures, I think 10 miles away. It's pretty incredible. And the other thing is not to surround the owl because that really scares the owl a lot. So there's a blind and people, this is one of these instances where people are surrounding the owl and you can imagine how scared it is. So baiting is a huge issue with wildlife viewing. So it's something I deal with a lot. It's not good for any animal. For one thing, if the mouse gets away, you're introducing a non-indigenous animal, and we know how that can be very destructive in communities. And often done at roadsides. So the majority of the owls they get at the Owl Foundation, at least a third, have been hit by a car. So there are other injuries that they might get as a result of humans, but getting hit by a car is the most common. And that's for a variety of reasons, mostly that these northern owls, like this green gray owl, don't know what a car is. They don't know what a person is. They might never have seen a car or a human being. So this is all new to them. It also reduces the fear of humans so that they get, this person is obviously baiting and putting probably the bait right on their camera. So, the owl then thinks, oh, people have food. So I'll go to the person, you know, and get some more food. And of course, not every person's going to have food, and it could be scary and it could be bad news for the owl. And it also makes them think that there's lots of food there. So this baiting may go on for a couple of weeks. And when everybody's got their 1,000 pictures or seen it, then they'll move off and the owl will then have no food. So it kind of lulls them into a false sense of security. And they maybe lose their hunting skills. So like any skill, they've got to keep their skills up really high levels so that they can catch prey. So it's just not a good idea to bait. And in some places it is illegal. And I've seen this situation many times because I'm out birding so much. Okay, let's look and see what we've got in Southern Ontario. I'll be interested in seeing which owls you've seen. So the most common one by far, as I mentioned, is the eastern screech owl. It's very tiny. It's almost like the size of a robin. So I had to go and retrieve one once and I could literally hold it in my hand. It was injured. And so they have a very funny call. I thought I had the call here. No, maybe it's next. Next most common is great horned owls, but we're finding that they're decreasing. So our studies are showing this. I think they're getting a double whammy, in my opinion, from West Nile virus. They really seem to suffer from West Nile virus. And also habitat loss because they're a bird of the forest. So the more forests that get cut down, the fewer great horned owls we have. Whereas an eastern screech owl can live in your yard. It's got a big old tree with lots of knots in it. They can be quite happy in there. Put up a couple of boxes for them. Got lots of insects that don't have any chemicals on them. They could be quite happy, and we often find them in urban areas as well as in the country. Long-eared owls are the shyest bird I've ever met. It's really hard to find them. They don't like to be seen. They like to make themselves really long like this, so it looks like they look like a branch sitting in the tree. Northern saw-whet owls are here now, but they'll go back up north shortly. They're one of the few owls that actually kind of does a migration. One of my favorites, but also rapidly decreasing, are short-eared owls, mostly because of the habitat. They like these wet fields, and you know, they're very vulnerable to being for agriculture. Those fields are already kind of clear, and also development. So we're finding that we're finding fewer and fewer short-eared owls. So here's the screech owl. It's very small, 16 to 25 centimeters, or for us that didn't learn that in school, robin size. And we're going to try. Let's see. No, sorry. They like to come out at the dim light right before it gets dark. They're quite sedentary. They have 2 to 6 eggs. They can be in various colors. Mostly they're gray. Has anybody seen a screech owl? No. You might have heard them. The red ones are Western, and then sometimes when the red and gray breed, they have brown babies. They like woodland, but also small parks. And they breed. So this is why we're doing our surveys now, because this is the beginning of breeding season. They like cavity nests, so that's why you can put a box up for them. And they like to eat mice, small rodents, small birds, and insects. And they mostly hunt from a perch, so they're listening for their prey. And again, they do well in urban. Here we go. Here's so they have 2 songs. 3, I guess.
That's not one.
No, I'll play it again. Sorry. Here's the trill. And then there's a whinny. And then very infrequent trill. Whinny. And yeah, the last one, you don't want to be out in the dark at night and hear that. It's pretty scary. Yeah. But it wouldn't be unusual to go out at night now and maybe hear these birds sing, doing their vocalizations. Even in your backyard, like I say, if there's a bunch of trees around where you live. Great horned owls are pretty big. They're bigger than a crow. This is a family, so the babies are white, and then they get darker in color as they get older. They like the low light conditions. There's also sedentary, usually only 1 or 2 babes in the nest. They really do they like big woodlots by an open field, so it's really easy for them to hunt. And they have the stick nests, and they actually sit on eggs even when it's still snowing. So in February, they're probably already in the nest with eggs. And they prefer pre-made nests. So they often do cohabitate with red-tailed hawks, which is unusual, but they have different hunting styles. So red-tailed hawk hunts in the day, and then the owl hunts at night. They both like rodents, birds, medium-sized mammals, and reptiles. Don't ever pick a carcass of great horned owl if you see one on the side of the road, for instance, because their favorite food is skunk. And your car will smell, everything smells. So here's their territorial. Male, female, all my bad. Yeah, so it's kind of the classical movie owls sound. So saw what we played already. It is that mechanical kind of sound. They're pretty tiny. They're the smallest owl in Ontario. Juveniles on the top picture look quite different from the adults in the bottom picture. They're strictly nocturnal. You might hear them out at Encore Park, for instance, up in that way. And they're one of the few that migrate. They lay from 4 to 7 eggs, forest habitat. They also like to live in boxes or holes in the trees. And they like small rodents. Remember, they're pretty tiny. And invertebrates, insects. And then food perch. We did hear the call, but I'll play it one more time. You would never hear that call. Normally down here, that's usually these are the ones that are really hard to find, the great horned owls. They steal crow nests, yeah. And they're not quite migratory. They do wander and gather in groups in the winter. They lay 2 to 10 eggs. Houston, they really like dense. They do not like to be seen. If you can see in the bottom picture. But if you come near, he's most likely to go deeper into that tree or fly off. And they cohabitate with Cooper's hawks. They like to eat small rodents and birds, and they hunt on the wing. We'll play the bark. You can actually hear that like up to a kilometer away. It doesn't sound very loud on here. More typical owl sound. Short-eared owls. So they love the ground. They're a species at risk because of the habitat requirements. They like low light. And they're nomadic, so they will roost together in the winter and then go off to breed. 1 to 11 eggs, then they go in habitat, meadows, marshlands. But they like a lot of dense vegetation on the ground to nest in. They share habitat with northern harrier, if you know that bird. And they will start to breed now. And they just kind of go, and that's the nest. So just a little scrape on the ground, much like a killdeer would do. And they like to eat small rodents and birds. And they hunt on, so they hover over a field. They're actually a beautiful flyer. They fly more like a moth. So if you see them at dusk, they're just really beautiful to see. They look like a ghost because they're very, very pale underneath. And we'll just play. It's more barking. One of the weirdest sounds that an owl can make. Okay, so there are a few owls that come sometimes down into our area, but not very often. Well, actually, barred owl is a really interesting story because that is a bird you would hear up north. But we're getting more and more of them in Niagara just within the last 10 years. And we're getting other northern species like pileated woodpecker. There's even been a fisher sighted here. So very curious why all these northern species are coming south to breed and live. And this is the only owl I haven't seen in Ontario. It's called a barn owl. It's really common in almost every country in the world except for the Arctic and Antarctic. And the reason is their legs. They don't have any feathers that cover their legs. So in the old days, they used to be here because we had barns that they could get into. And, you know, especially a cow barn, that's nice and warm. And they could survive the winters. But now there's no place, you know, the barns are more sealed up and it's harder for them to find a place to get into and keep warm in the winter. And every once in a while, there's not enough food up in the Arctic, leanings mostly, and snowy owls will come down. Of course, it's always a big circus because they're so beautiful and everybody wants to see them. Barred owls are large, okay. We will be able to hear a barred owl. You might recognize it. They have dark eyes, so they're the only owl in Ontario that has these deep dark eyes. They're almost all nocturnal, sedentary. They lay 1 to 5 eggs. It's common in central to northern Ontario, but now moving into our area. We get new nests every year. Mixed forest type, they like a wet forest actually. They breed March to May, so starting now. They're ones that even though they're big, they look for a cavity to nest in. And they like rodents, small birds, invertebrates, they eat snakes, everything, because they like that wet forest habitat. And they hunt for perches. And they have absolutely no ear tufts and the dark, dark eyes. Let's hear this call, see if you recognize it. That played well. So we call that the who cooks for you, who cooks for you all. And the nesting more like a screech. So sometimes they have several nesting calls because, or several vocalizations because they're telling their partner you know, an intruder different things. So barn owls, they're endangered again because of the lack of barns that they can get into. They're nocturnal. They like farmland for sure. They breed early, starting in February, but again, we don't have very many here. And if there are here, people don't talk about it. 2 to 18 eggs. So they may have different clutches. So they may, if their nest fails or the season's really good, lots of food availability, they might re-nest. They like cliff edges and barns. And they like to eat mice and small birds and insects. It hunts in flight, so it hovers. And it's really got a distinctive, beautiful face. So some people say it's like heart-shaped. No ear tufts again. Just quickly going to play their very scary song. It actually is really scary in person. Snowy owls. So they're the largest by weight. Great gray is largest by size, but they're really heavy. Their feathers are the best insulating materials available because they live in the Arctic, but it's incredible how warm it can keep them. They hunt any time of the day or night. They're nomadic, so they might come south when there's no food up north. They like airports and open vistas that look like the Arctic. So even on the edge of a lake, they won't start breeding until later because it doesn't get nice up there until May. 3 to 11 eggs. They nest on the ground. So again, they just make a scrape on the ground, not much. They don't have too many predators, so they can get away with it. And they'll like rodents, birds, medium-sized animals because they are big and they hunt on the way. And I've heard them call in person, so we'll just play a couple of these. Let's try to. And when you're that big, you can get those kind of things. Okay. So you can actually identify males from females because males are the ones that are white, but the female's pretty heavily barred. So when they do come down, we can often identify whether they're male or female, which you can't really with the other species. However, in all species of owls, as well as raptors, the female is bigger. And there's lots of theories why that might be happening. So what can we do to help owls? Well, the big thing is don't litter. So don't throw your apple core into the ditch because the mice goes after the apple core and then the owls fly in front of a car to get the mice. So that's a huge thing. Let people know how cool owls are. They really are cool. You can put up roost boxes and baskets. You can plant an area of wildflowers and trees because you want to plant for the prey as well as the owls, and support conservation efforts, and you know, don't disturb very much. Okay, if you hear of somebody finding an injured animal or you find one, best not to touch it. There's avian flu is now in mammals as well as birds, so we need to be very careful. Best to phone a wildlife rehabilitator or the local SPCA. The local SPCAs are in touch with the Owl Foundation, and they do go and get injured owls for them a lot. You need to have all the data where it was found and how long it's been there and what the behavior is. And then just step back and watch and see what it's doing. Because keep in mind, these animals and owls in particular are very, very scared, and you're more likely to harm them than anything if you get too close to them or trying to pick them up. Same with babies. Sometimes babies end up on the ground before they learn how to fly. So it may not be that they've been abandoned. So you want to just monitor the situation and see if the adults do come and feed the babe. And if not, then maybe you want to phone a rehabilitator to rescue them. And this is one thing I get to do is sometimes go and release an owl or a raptor that's been injured. So it's a huge thrill. Let's see if I can play that again. And you can see they're pretty happy to be on their way back in the wild. So thank you for your attention and for your support of the Owl Foundation. I know some people here are regular donors, and we really appreciate that because that's the only way the foundation keeps going. So thank you for your attention.
The lights. And it's time for questions. If anybody has a question, up to you. Any question? Couple of questions. Okay.
Thank you. That was a wonderful song.
Well, thank you.
I like the fact that you had sound as well. It's the first time I've ever heard it has sound.
Oh,
The
great.
question I have is the ear tufts. You said that they're not really ears, but ears are on the side, but a lot of the animals have those ear tufts. Is there a purpose at all for the ear tufts?
Sexual attraction. You asked.
And some of the okay.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Excuse me.
It's me.
Expectancy.
Well, it's always longer in captivity because you get free meals and good housing. So the bigger owls could live maybe 30 years. The smaller owls, maybe 10 or so. I mean, I've been visiting the Owl Foundation for probably 20 or 30 years. Great Grays have been there for maybe up to 20 years, I think, but they weren't babes when they got there. They were hit by cars. And then, yeah, so it really depends. In the wild, mortality in the first year is 90%. Yeah. For one thing, the female lays eggs on different days because it takes a lot of calcium. So she'll lay an egg one day and then maybe a day or two later, another one. So when they hatch, one's going to be big, one smaller. Well, if there's only so much food, the small one gets bumped out of the nest. So that's a cause of mortality. But yeah, they're just, I mean, they're young, they got to learn to fly and hunt, and there's all sorts of things that are dangerous out there. They get, yeah, broken wing, or they get an infection of some kind and they just won't make it no wild. So it's a really tough life for them. Yeah.
Wonderful, folks. Thank you so much. Just gonna go and turn off the recording. And you go carry on. Excuse me. Just watch the recording.
I'm going to ask Cameron to thank our speaker. What a presentation. Thank you.